My name is Mark Seabell. I'm with Central Mass Connections in Faith. I've been part of it since the beginning. And the fun for us is learning about new faiths. And this is one I'm particularly fascinated by and interested to learn about. And I hope you will be too. So welcome as we gather together to do this. And I'm just going to give a quick look. It's got a few words on it, but I'm going to ask Jeff to flip to the next slide, please. Central Mass Connections of Faith. We are a network of individuals, places of worship, and community organizations representing 27 different faiths. I actually figured it out about a month or two ago. Somebody asked me how many faiths were a part of us, and I thought, gee, I'm not sure. And I went through our database of 300 people and also our core team, and we came up with 27 faiths, one of them being atheism, because that is a belief, that is the way people believe, what they believe. But it's 27 faiths from many Central Mass towns. Our purpose, and this is our core purpose, is to build bridges and friendships across cultures based on 4 core values: respect, curiosity, inclusivity, and open-mindedness. And a lot of work actually went into identifying those core values, a lot of debate. Through our annual gatherings, and we have 3 every year, in the spring, in the fall, and in the winter, we are committed to creating spaces that raise up the lived experiences of different religions and cultural groups. Through learning and encountering, Central Mass Connections in Faith seeks to provide the foundation upon which a more inclusive society can be realized through anti-racist education and action, and anti-bias of all kinds. So that's who we are, and welcome. And I'm now going to turn things over to Leva, who is going to lead the conversation or the presentation about the Baha'i faith.
Hi everyone. Welcome. It's so wonderful to be here with you all. My name is Leva, and I would like to thank the Central Massachusetts Connections in Faith for sponsoring today's spring event where we're introducing Baha'i faith. We have so many people to thank today that helped make this event possible. Thank you so much to Mark for even suggesting this idea a few months back, and to the core members of the Central Massachusetts Connections in Faith. Thank you so much for your time and efforts in planning this event and collaborating with the Westboro Baha'i community. And we're so grateful for the considerations of Rabbi Rachel from the congregation in Baha'i. And of course, a special thank you to Pastor Jeff and his congregation of the Good Shepherd Lutheran Church for allowing us to be in this beautiful church today to have this gathering.
Leva?
Yes?
I'm sitting all the way back here.
And you can't hear?
I'm not here.
Okay, so sorry. Thank you. So, Baha'u'llah, the founder and the prophet of the Baha'i faith, had said, "Consort with the followers of all religions in a spirit of friendliness and fellowship." And I think that this is the exact space and gathering that we can achieve that today. Before we begin today's program, I'd like to ask everyone to please silence your cell phones if you haven't done so already. And we're going to start with blessings, and you will hear 4 prayers recited in different languages. One in English, read by Paula; in Spanish, read by Carolina; Inupiat, a language from an Alaskan Native tribe, recited by Fred; and I don't know, is Nushin here? But if she is, she'll be chanting a prayer in Persian. Thank you. So we'll be starting our devotional portion for today's program.
blessed is the spot, and the house, and the place, and the city, and the heart, and the mountain, and the refuge, and the cave, and the valley, and the land, and the sea, and the island, and the meadow, where mention of God hath been made, and his praise glorified.
Bendito es el sitio, la casa y el lugar, la ciudad y el corazón y la montaña, y el refugio y la cueva, y el valle y la tierra, y el mar y la isla y la pradera, donde se ha hecho mención de Dios y se ha glorificado su alabanza.
Kuviaha tak una, iglulu inilu, iglu karnilu umamalu, kinging nirlu kumaya biyulu, hetilu nuharlu nunalu, tariulu kiki katarlu natiri nukulu, gadima tia tamaya hamakapa, kuyagyo planilu, kuviaha tak una.
ای حسین به ذکر الله مأنوس شد و از دونش غافل، چه که ذکرش انیسیست بی نفاق و مونسی با کمال وفا، میهمانیست بی خیانت و همدمیست بی ضرر و جنایت، مجالسیست امین و مصاحبیست با ثبات و تمکین، رفیقیست با وفا به شریکه، هر کجا روی با و هرگز از تو نگسلد، غم را به سرور تبدیل نماید و زنگ غفلت بزداید.
I'd like to invite Fred to come and give a slideshow presentation of the introduction of Baha'i faith.
I didn't know I was expecting this. Imagine we're in an elevator, and it's a real tall building, and it's going to take 3 minutes to get to the top. And on the ground floor, we all walked in, and somebody said, "Tell me about the Baha'i faith." And you have to tell me about it in the time it takes the elevator to get to the top. So go ahead. Baha'i means follower of Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith. Does the Baha'i faith have a Bible? The short answer is yes. Scripture and authoritative texts are written in over 100 volumes. We are often asked, how big is your community? How many Baha'is are there? Well, like Christians, no one really knows. But we can tell you that our writings are in over 800 languages, and there are more than 25 people in Westboro participating in Baha'i activities. We are also often asked, do we have temples or places of worship? Here are 9 places that are scattered throughout the world. Where is the Baha'i faith centered? Well, community affairs are administered at local, national, and international levels. Our spiritual center is in Akka, Israel. The administrative center is in Haifa, Israel. Here are pictures of our spiritual and administrative centers. What do Baha'is believe? We believe in one loving creator, that there have been many messengers from this one God, and that the human race is one human family. What are we trying to do? We're trying to root out the prejudices and inequalities that divide people and work together to build a peaceful new civilization. We have classes to help children discover and strengthen their inherent spiritual qualities. We are working with preteens and teens, developing decision-making skills and a mindset of service to others. We are holding study circles to learn about the spiritual nature of life and initiate service projects. And we hold prayer gatherings to nourish souls and inspire meaningful friendships.
Thank you, and now we'll watch a short video. Go ahead, Pastor Jen, thank you.
The legacy of the 20th century is really the world recognizing that it is one.
At the start of the 1900s, countries were a lot more separated, both politically and otherwise. And because of many of the events that happened during that century, humans were a lot more connected.
If you just look at systems of communication and the internet, people can communicate with each other instantaneously from all over the world.
Now, the challenge is, how can we spiritually be connected? And how can we catch up our spiritual selves to our material selves?
The message of Baha'u'llah, I think, what makes it so transformative is that it speaks in this day for the very first time of the true unity of the entire human race. In this period of transformation that we're in right now, the world is going from a state of infancy to a state of maturity.
As certain systems and institutions may start to disintegrate, other systems are being simultaneously created that represent forces of integration.
Baha'is are striving every day in this process of integration to be conscious of the fact that everyone is a member of the human family, and that takes precedence over every other piece of life. We have national identities and racial identities in the world today, but our truest identity is that we're all human. which calls for a complete reorganization of human relationships that the world has never seen before.
So powerful is the light of unity that it can illuminate the whole earth. Baha'u'llah, whose name means the glory of God, was born in Persia in 1817 and was renowned for his generosity, compassion, keen intelligence, and excellent character. In the middle of the 19th century, Baha'u'llah was summoned by God to reveal a new message to humanity, a new revelation from God, thereby ushering an era of universal peace. Baha'u'llah's teachings form the basis of the Baha'i faith, and it's a message of infinite hope for all of humanity.
Baha'u'llah has brought this revelation that we are all members of one human family, and we're working towards this idea of universal peace, and that's really the foundation for the work that we're doing.
We don't have a faith that stands apart and is meant just for Baha'is. Rather, our whole purpose is to serve humanity, and so we're constantly reaching out in the spirit of collaboration with others.
The Baha'i community offers various activities to unite the community, such as devotional gatherings for people of all different backgrounds to come together and pray, classes for children that focus on their spiritual education, groups for junior youth to be of service to their community, and then a series of courses for people who are 15 and up to have spiritual conversations and really reflect on our lives and build the capacity to be of service. From these activities stem different social action projects that would be appropriate for that community.
What the Baha'is are trying to do right now is to just really create community life in the places where we live. That involves just getting people together in different spaces. And one of those spaces is the devotional gathering.
We have devotionals about twice a month.
A lot of the people, they never how to gather like the Baha'is have devotion. Different people from different backgrounds and different religions.
We believe in opening our homes and our hearts.
This is the place where Baha'is and their friends are coming together to join in prayer, from which we realign our purposes and we gain that unseen energy that sustains all the different things we do in a community. The Spiritual Education of Children program seeks to try to help young children between 6 and 11 develop those qualities that they inherently possess through prayer, through memorizing quotes, and then they learn stories, they sing songs.
So being able to have the children class here in my community is really important. Most of the kids in my children class are from an immigrant family. So this children class is like a place where the kids can have fun together, learn from each other, and to inspire each other.
The moment that really touched my heart is that every weekend I see them coming and being really excited to learn about new things and to do like arts and crafts and just like playing with each other and seeing the changes in the children. They would be motivated, they would be like singing a lot, they would be praying, and then they would be really friendly to each other and then know how to treat each other.
Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program is for those ages 11 to 14. They go through a series of stories about different junior youth across the world and examine different spiritual concepts such as hope versus despair, justice, and then they examine their own talents, their own interests, and think, what does the community need and how can we play a role in bettering our communities?
It's a conduit for them to do service in their communities, to further their education, and a way to socialize in a healthy environment. It's facilitated by an animator who helps draw forth the voices of the junior youth. It's their group. I realized sort of once I kind of just let them do their thing, they'll take it from there.
In order to offer these services, Baha'is and their friends are equipping themselves with these capacities to be able to offer programs like the Spiritual Education Chapter, the Juvenile Spiritual Empowerment Program. And the way that we're doing this is through the Study Circle program.
The Study Circle is a group of people who are coming together and studying spiritual material, kind of discussing about it and investigating the implications of those things on their lives.
What does it mean in my day-to-day life that let deeds, not words, be my doing? And how do I apply those beautiful ideals in the way that I interact with people and in the different services that I do in my community?
Once we've been in a neighborhood working with the children and junior youth of that community, from these activities, of course, stem different social action projects that would be appropriate for that community.
These youth, they could identify the problems. So we're pulling together resources to accomplish, at first, small service projects, trash pickups, visiting the elders, and they gradually become more complex. After 4 years of doing service projects, it became a part of their nature to serve others.
This is the changeless faith of God, eternal in the past, eternal in the future.
Baha'u'llah teaches that there is one God, and that all the religions are part of one divinely revealed process, by which God makes his will and purpose known to humanity. Although we may differ in our concepts of God's nature, although we may pray in different languages and call God by different names, we are speaking about that same transcendent being.
This process of uniting humankind has begun, and there's no turning back. It's going to be long, it's going to take a lot of work, and there's going to be many challenges along the way, but we'll also grow, both individually and also collectively.
The idea that everybody has a part to play, no matter how large or small, is really important because it speaks to a consciousness that we are all connected to the same purpose.
And so that means on a daily basis, you're reflecting on, am I working towards the oneness of humanity? Am I seeing in the people around me, my brother and my sister? Am I reflecting on the teachings and writings of Baha'u'llah? If all of us are doing that, individually, our efforts become collective and change actually happens.
We can build a better world together, but it's going to take every single person seeing themselves as part of this collective whole and seeing what difference they can make.
And now we will hear from Carolina, who will be giving us a presentation on community building activities and efforts in our locality.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're very happy to be here today. Very thankful, grateful for. Oh, sorry. I know. It's very hard to know where I should speak, but anyway, thank you very much for having us today, and we're very grateful for this space. As you could watch in the movie, there are some activities that Baha'is do around the world, and this is happening also here in the Worcester County. We call it the Worcester Cluster. And the idea in the Baha'i faith is that we have inherent capacities, that we all possess these capacities to love, to be compassionate, to be generous, to have artistic talents, to be creative. And we have educational programs that help us discover these capacities and put them into action for the betterment of our communities. So that's the main idea in the Baha'i faith. So we have a program for the children, a program that inspires children. And we have one in Westboro and one in Shrewsbury right now. And this program, as you could watch in the movie, through prayer, through Baha'i quotes, through stories, through music and art, children discover these capacities that they have. And they discuss how to put them into action. Even though they are young, souls, they can still put those qualities into action. So in Westboro, for example, we have a class where Christian, Hindu, and Baha'i kids participate in the class. Every Sunday they meet and talk about these topics. The second educational program is the Junior Youth Program. As you can see, it's a program geared toward participants in the ages of 11 to 14. And they also have these inherent capacities that we also want them to explore and really, see themselves as agents of transformation in their communities. So the curriculum has, the study of selected text. They plan and implement service projects, and they have artistic and recreational activities that help them develop this friendship that is so important in this age. And in these groups, we have one in Worcester and one in Westboro so far. And as I say, this is not just a program for Baha'i junior youth, it's open to, actually the Baha'i junior youth are a minority in these programs. Usually they're like, junior youth from other religions coming. Then we have a program for adults and youth. And this is the study circles that we watched in the movie. Basically, in these gatherings, friends from different religions again get together to study these spiritual themes and these spiritual concepts and our role in society. How can we develop these inherent capacities that we all have too again? And how can we, for example, pray better as a group, as a community? How can we engage in meaningful conversations? How can we become children class teachers or animators if we want to help in that path? And so in Westboro, Worcester, Shrewsbury, and Northbridge, we're having these kind of study circles with Baha'is and non-Baha'is. And the last, besides the educational programs that I just talked about, we also have prayer gatherings where Baha'is and non-Baha'is meet regularly to connect with the Word of God. They can bring their writings from their religions. Through reading and sharing of these writings and music, we try to elevate these conversations and start thinking, how can we work together towards the betterment of our communities? So these meetings are happening in Worcester and Westboro right now. And we will have a display table in the hallway. There's some materials that you can see from these educational programs so that you can get more familiar with what kinds of concepts we are discussing in these different programs. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
And now we will begin our question and answer session. And our panel consists of Marnoush, Chris, and Bill, and Carolina.
I'll talk loud. Thank you. I'm curious about what significance of any, if any, there is to the fact that the faith's headquartered in Israel.
Baha'u'llah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Baha'u'llah was from Iran.
and he grew up in a very wealthy family. And later on in his life, he heard about someone named the Bab, the Gate. And the Bab, who also was from Iran, said he was preparing the way for a promised one of all religions. And all the world's religions talk about someday the Jews awaiting the Messiah, the second return of Christ, the 10th Avatar, the 5th Buddha. All the religions talk about that. And Baha'u'llah, we believe, is the one who was foretold. And because of his religion, he was persecuted. And he was a prisoner for 40 years and persecuted by the Persian Empire and the Ottoman Empire. And so his first exile went from Iran to Baghdad, then to Constantinople, Adrianople, and finally to Akka. Facing a lot of torment and suffering along the way with his followers. And even though these two empires tried to snuff out Baha'u'llah and his message of the oneness of mankind, the oneness of religion, one God, his faith has grown from strength to strength. And so actually today, not in numbers, but in locations, the Baha'i faith is the second most widespread religion in the world. It's found almost everywhere. So anyway, his last place of banishment was in Palestine. So he ended up in that area due to his banishments. And so that's how, and then of course Palestine, that part of Akka became part of Israel. So as it was mentioned before, the spiritual center of the Baha'i faith is in Akka, and the administrative is on Mount Carmel, which Baha'u'llah actually had visited as well. And how many people here have actually been to the Baha'i Temple, Baha'i World Center? Yeah, it's renowned for its great beauty and has visitors from all over the world. So that's a little bit how I got to Israel.
Thank you. You said a lot about how the Baha'i faith sees one God and various manifestations of God throughout history. I understand how this fits the tradition of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, etc., all moving forward. There have been throughout history, and are still today, quite a few faiths that believe in multiple gods, with different areas of influence, perhaps in a hierarchy. How do those faiths fit into the Baha'i structure?
If I understand what you said, that there are some traditions that believe in multiple gods, and you were wondering how the Baha'i faith responds to that? Is that my understanding of the question?
Yeah, we could use Roman gods for as a non-contemporary example.
Yes. Very, very amazing question, and not an easy one to respond to in a few words. But my understanding is that some of the beliefs in multiple gods is a result of years and years of interpretation of what the original writings of each one of these religions were. For example, some representations of some powers of God were portrayed or demonstrated through statues and images, and they named them in a different way, but they were really, initially, they were supposed to be the attributes of one God. This is what our understanding of those teachings are. I hope that responds, but it's a very simplistic answer.
I like that. Thank you.
Since I believe in the oneness of religion, and I'm a student of comparative religion, I'm not a scholar, but I enjoy it. But even in Hinduism,
Hold the microphone.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. I'm sorry. Believing in the oneness of religion, and I enjoy comparative religion, and I'm not a religious scholar, but there are Hindu scripture that talk about one God. And like Nourish said, it seemed like people tend to deify the attributes of God. And something like Buddhism, well, how could you have the oneness of religion, when Buddha didn't believe in God? Actually, there are Buddhists who do believe in God. And there's a book called The God of Buddha by Jamshid Fauzdar, which goes into that. And there's scriptures that, indicate. So the issue is that when a religion first comes, it revitalizes the world and brings pure teachings for the betterment of humanity and those people. But sometimes over time, the teachings get changed. So I'll just say that in my own search or my own investigation, I really found that there is one God, and that all the religions teach the oneness of God in my search.
Thank you, this is so wonderful, thank you so much. Can you tell us about the leadership structure, the structure of leadership in the faith?
Yeah, so I think,
hold the mic up.
As it was mentioned in the movie, or actually in the slide presentation, the first slide presentation, the Baha'i community is organized at the local, national, and international levels, and sort of the administrative affairs of the community. Sorry, the administrative affairs of the community are managed by what we call spiritual assemblies, and spiritual assemblies are elected bodies within each community, and so every year at the local and national levels, we have local spiritual assemblies in each community, and then we have a national spiritual assembly in each country. And then every 5 years, the Universal House of Justice is elected, which is the international body, administrative body. When I say administrative, I mean, there's a separation between managing the affairs of the community and sort of being the spiritual leaders of the community, right? And so those are separate roles. We don't have spiritual leaders of the community. The spiritual leader of the Baha'i faith is Baha'u'llah, and the teachings, we turn to the writings of Baha'u'llah and certain clarifications of the writings of Baha'u'llah for the spiritual aspect. But so the spiritual assemblies don't alter or change or interpret the writings.
Yeah, hi, and thank you for the great presentation. I'm from Sacred Faith. So we do believe in one God, and in our religion it is basically abstract. The God is no shape, nothing, and it's not a person or idol. It's abstract concept, but it do is one God. So what is your concept of one God?
What is our concept of one God? Well, I think Nourish and Bill, I think they said it fairly well, and I guess what I would add to that is, we often refer to God is sort of the unknowable essence, right? So one of the sort of teachings within the Baha'i faith, or sort of admonishments within the Baha'i faith, is the absence of idols and sort of deities that might represent God or attributes of God, because the idea behind God being the unknowable essence is that any attribute or name that we assign to God is below or doesn't capture the full nature of God. And so we have to sort of be aware of that. We got to be aware of sort of the material limitations that we try to ascribe when we talk about God. And so, in our prayers, for example, we will often refer to attributes or titles that we give to God, and there are a lot of them. There's the magnificent, the all-knowing, the omniscient, and so there are a lot of these titles. And so I would say, in terms of the oneness of God, we think about God as having many different attributes, and sometimes in other religions we see those attributes represented as other gods.
Do you have brick and mortar buildings? You mentioned Westboro and Shrewsbury activities. In the video, a lot of it looks like in people's homes getting together. And the second part of that question is, how do people find you and learn about your religion? There's not a central location to gather.
So our faith is working towards the betterment of our communities. It has a big emphasis on the work that we can do at the local level. And so we believe that we cannot improve a community just ourselves. The Baha'is are such a small group that we usually invite others to join us in our activities. And as you see in the videos, yes, we meet in homes, because we believe in this concept that brings us closer as a community, rather than having like a large temple. However, when communities grow in activities so much, they have built like local temples, like we call them local house of worships, where it's a symbol of how much work and progress it has gone through in that community. Some examples are like Colombia has one of these ones, and we have other temples all spread across the continents, but these are like house of worships. But at Westboro, Shrewsbury, for example, which is your question, we meet at homes. And you were also asking about how can people learn about the Baha'i faith. So we have, I know Worcester has a Facebook page. They used to have a website. I'm not sure if the website is still over. Okay, thank you for that, Eugenio. And I'm sure probably in that website we can also find some of the contacts for Westboro and other communities that are in the Worcester County. So that's usually how that works. I don't know if anybody wants to answer.
Has anybody here been to the Baha'i Temple in Wilmette, Illinois? Like all Baha'i temples, it has 9 sides. And 9 is an inclusive number, it's a number of unity, because you go 0 through 9 and then you start repeating it. So the neat thing about it's very close to Chicago, is that the Baha'i temple has writings from all the world's religions on the temple itself. And the services are open to anybody and everybody. A Baha'i temple is known as a Mashriq al-Asghar, which is a dawning place of the mention of God. So that's all.
I have a loud voice, so it doesn't. But anyway, the question I have is pertaining to, I caught something about a study group that involves Hindu community, Christian community, and I get the third one. But I was just curious as to why, for example, what was the third one?
Baha'i.
Baha'i, okay. I was just curious as to why those two faith communities, Hindu and Christian, and what if another faith community wanted to be part of it? How does that work? You know, for example, I'm Jewish, so let's say we wanted to have, some representation. Obviously, I could show up, but just curious.
So actually, we used to have a Jewish child coming to our class. So this is about children's classes. Right now in Westboro, we have, as you said, a Hindu, a Christian, and a Baha'i representation in the class. And this is because the classes usually start with the Baha'i kid inviting other friends from the classroom. And Westboro has a large community of Hindu and Christian, families. So we've been blessed that we have these families open. They have been really open to send their kids to learn about the spiritual qualities that honestly are like universal to all religions. Every lesson is on compassion, generosity, sincerity. So these are all universal teachings. Now, we used to live in Newton, and we used to have a Jewish kid because the community of Jewish families is large there. So we would have, and I remember some Jewish friends that went back to Israel because they were originally from Israel. But it doesn't mean that we couldn't have Jewish children coming to our children's class. It's open to any religion, and actually makes the class more interesting when you have children from different backgrounds, because they will bring their writings, they will bring their own views, and everybody learns from each other, which is amazing. It's really good.
Also, in regard to adults, there are the study circles that was mentioned, and we come together around certain themes. And that is also multi-faith. There's a systematic way of looking at spiritual matters, starting with the spiritual nature of human being, and the power of prayers, and life after death, and so on. It moves to how to have elevated conversations around spiritual matters. There's some history, and it goes on into all kinds of themes, process of consultation, how to raise vibrant communities. So these are all very much designed to have diversity and of voices together.
The Baha'i writings say that we should be a lover of the light, no matter the source. So it's not my attitude, well, I'm a Baha'i and you're going to come and learn from me. I can learn from everybody. Because if, as I believe, all religions are from the same divine source, then there's a lot to learn from everybody. So it's said in the Baha'i faith that there is no us and them. There is only us, meaning all of us. And that's the new attitude towards the oneness of humanity.
Hi. My question is, you're a very young religion, and yet you're so spread out. How did that come to happen? And what brought each one of you to the Baha'i faith?
That is a fascinating question. I love that topic. Right now I'm reading a book with many stories of how people found how they encountered the faith and how they, got to that moment that they felt like they wanted to be a part of it. That's fascinating, and I think if we had time and everybody shared their view, it would be very diverse. I don't know, how is it spread? Is that the question?
It's both questions.
Both of them. She wanted to know how we know.
How each of you got to it, and also how did it become from, I mean, I'm originally from California. That's my hometown. So I know the temple there very well. I've gone down the stairs and everything. So how did you get from that little corner of the world to everywhere? And that's one question. And one question, and the other one, which is kind of related, is what brought each of you to that.
I can try to summarize. Yeah. So so Bill earlier mentioned exile of Baha'u'llah over his life. So after Baha'u'llah sort of declared himself as a new manifestation of God, he was exiled. And through that exile, he traveled throughout the Ottoman Empire, and every place that he was exiled, a new Baha'i community was born. And so this was one of the failures of the attempts to sort of suppress the growth of the Baha'i faith. Was the religious leaders at the time, their idea was, well, let's separate Baha'u'llah from the new Baha'is, and then it'll all sort of fade out. And instead what happened is every time Baha'u'llah went to a new place, and new people learned about the Baha'i faith that otherwise wouldn't have heard about it. And so that continued until Baha'u'llah ended up in Akka, where he lived the rest of his life in Akka. And his son, Abdu'l-Baha, traveled with him and lived with him in Akka. Akka at the time was a prison city, so they were not allowed to, they were basically prisoners within the city, they weren't allowed to leave. But, towards the end of Baha'u'llah's life, they allowed him to sort of leave the confines of the city and move outside the city. And then after he died, his son, Abdu'l-Baha, was allowed to travel. And so the Baha'i faith was introduced to the West by Abdu'l-Baha's travels first to Europe and then to the Americas as well. And so that's sort of how the Baha'i faith became, transcending both East and West. And then after Abdu'l-Baha, we had a figure, the nephew of Abdu'l-Baha, Sharif Hindi, became what we call the guardian of the faith. And the guardian of the faith was responsible for taking all of these communities that were spread around the world and maturing them, turning them into these structures, so establishing the administrative process so that we have spiritual assemblies and they can grow and they can manage their own affairs. And among other things that Sharif Hindi did is he encouraged Baha'is to pioneer and to go to other places in the world to introduce the Baha'i faith in other places in the world. And that's how we ended up with Baha'is in very remote parts of the world.
So I had a question too, but I can't get an answer because we've run out of time for this part of the program. And we're going to move into the social hall for a wonderful dinner